Ontario students will soon be required to pass a financial literacy test as part of a number of changes coming to the requirements needed to earn a high school diploma in this province. And right now we're joined live by Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce. Minister Lecce, let's talk about this change. Why at the high school level instead of, collegiate?
We really believe we've got to make sure young people are financially literate before they graduate. This is a wholesale change in elevating the necessity for financial literacy knowledge should be part of the curriculum. And we're taking this seriously. It's the same level of seriousness we would apply to literacy. You have to pass an Ontario secondary literacy test in order to graduate. We're not doing the same for financial literacy because we need to make sure young people actually understand the concepts of inflation, of how to save, how to, build a budget for the year after graduation, the concepts of managing a credit card responsibly. This is life skill knowledge that we need more of. And what we're signaling to our school boards in high school, particularly, is that we're getting serious. We've already included financial literacy in every grade in elementary school. This is about elevating the focus, elevating the expectations, and giving young people skills they could use well beyond grade 12.
How does this prepare Canada students to compete with the rest of the world?
That's actually exactly our motivation. We've got to have a competitive advantage for our young people. And many of the young people say to me, look, I graduate with a lot of theoretical knowledge, but I need it to be more practical, more, rooted in the everyday experience of a student in this province. So when it comes to literally building budgets, when it comes to learning how to save for a mortgage, how to pay your taxes, this is practical knowledge, understanding the stock exchange and the market and the fluctuating nature of the economy. This is really going to help young people maintain that competitive advantage, build skills, and get into better paying jobs, because we think the gap in our experience today is we don't have enough experiential learning. And so I think this is a positive step forward endorsed by every job creator in the country, saying, look, it's about time that the government of Ontario and any government in this country actually made financial literacy a compulsion of graduation.
And Minister, speaking of high school students, we have Humberside Collegiate. There was the video that was posted of the roof leaking. We're talking about students going to school where their parents pay taxes. This shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we agree. I mean, this is why every year we give funding to school boards to maintain their schools. The Auditor General has given independent advice to the government. You should be spending 2.5% of your budget, $1.4 billion on maintenance funding. That is exactly what our government is doing every single year. And this particular school board, TDSB, is in a very privileged position because they're sitting on funding from years past that they haven't spent, that they ought to have spent. So my message, frankly, is to agree with so much of the concerns of parents out there that it is unacceptable. And the school board has the cash, and they ought to have deployed resources and skilled workers to fix the problem, because they're sitting on $315 million of maintenance funding. So our message to the board is get on with it, get the staff there, fix the problem, and let's try to be more preventative and proactive opposed to reacting to these issues.
How does that correlate with their backlog?
Well, they've got a long-standing deferred maintenance backlog that we inherited under the former Liberals, $15 billion of backlog province-wide. It's very serious. There's a reason why our Premier announced the more than doubling of funding to build schools, a $1.3 billion investment. We're building more than twice the schools we did under the former government in half the time. And with respect to maintenance, it begs the question, how can a school board with a large backlog be sitting on cash? It seems unconscionable. It almost seems irrational. And yet, the TDSB has $350 million of banked cash. It was such an issue for us in the government that we had to pass a law that forced that board and all boards to spend those dollars, those maintenance dollars, in real time. So we've got operating schools. We're modernizing our schools. We're investing in better ventilation. We've expanded the investments in accessibility. We know that's important to parents. It's important to us, which is why we doubled the cash. But now we need boards to actually do the job.
And what about consolidating schools, and also getting rid of some of the real estate property? It's valuable.
Totally. I mean, look, the TDSB is the largest landlord in the city of Toronto, $20 billion of assets. They're sitting on $150 million of cash from selling those schools, and they could be liquidating many more schools if they wanted to. We passed a legislation recently that forces school boards to actually right-size their assets. They're sitting on many assets they don't need. The TDSB does not need me to lift the moratorium to sell many of their real estate holdings. They could do that today. The problem is that they have such a large management of assets, they're not particularly good at this. And so we have many schools that ought to have been sold to the market. So the law we passed forces school boards to look at their assets, invest in their schools, and actually make sure we've got modern facilities for kids. That's the aspiration the government wants, and we put money behind it. We doubled the funding to build new schools, and we've maintained the $1.4 billion to operate our schools when it comes to the maintenance of them. So we agree. We've got to do better. We've got the dollars there. Now we just need the school boards to truly do their jobs. It's unacceptable. And I, as an observer, as a taxpayer, as a government member, I'll tell you, we're not happy about this. So we're applying pressure to the TDSB. I've said to the school board, you are sitting on cash that you should have spent last year. Keep in mind, they just got a replenishment of another $300 million this year. So it begs the question, why aren't you spending the dollars? And we've asked that question to the TDSB.
And Minister, continuing our look at a wide range of subjects, the Coalition for Palestinian and Muslim Families and Students in Peel, it says that the Peel District School Board is failing to address Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. What do you say to that?
Look, I've heard a lot of concerns from parents from various communities, Muslim, the Jewish community, Hindu and Sikhs. I've heard from many families who feel like some of our school boards are failing their kids. I mean, there's a lot of good work being done in Ontario, but the bottom line is we need to, first and foremost, teach our kids fundamental lessons of respect, that we don't see the differences in ourselves, in our faith or heritage or color of skin or place of birth. As Canadians, we've always celebrated the fact that there's inherent pride in our differences, and we should celebrate them, learn from them. So I really want to emphasize, how do we bring people together? How do we combat this increasing level of racism and discrimination? And how do we get serious on these issues? I mean, just yesterday I was on the phone with colleagues in Ottawa, and I had many students and families say to me, look, the rise of anti-Semitism there, Islamophobia in Peel, these are real issues, and they require a serious commitment to combat them. We have elevated our expectations of zero tolerance, and when students participate in that behavior, there's got to be accountability.
And Minister, finally, let's talk about the social media lawsuit.
Yeah.
You've said that the school should have done something sooner about this, and then some people are arguing, well, isn't that your job as the minister?
Well, we did require school boards in 2019 to develop a policy, but as you could appreciate, it was a patchwork of policies where everyone did something differently, and it was ineffective because no school board really wanted to hold students to account for the change. So before going off on large litigation, why not do everything you can as a school board? Like, for example, school boards could have restricted cell phones. They could have banned social media from school devices and Wi-Fi. They could have elevated learning in their curriculum on the responsible use of technology and digital literacy skills. But they didn't. Some did, to be fair, but most didn't. And thus, that's why, as minister, we came in with a provincial-wide plan to actually get serious and tackle the problem. Not talking about it, doing something about it. The issues are chronic. We need action like yesterday. So this is why I'm saying, while I appreciate their intent and I understand their concerns, and I share some of their concerns with respect to the unregulated impact of social media on mental health and academic success, we get it. But we opted to do something about it. We acted with a suite of actions that I think is really reflective of the need and the public health risk, which is why we restricted cell phones. It's why we banned vaping and cannabis. Technically, those things were already illegal, and yet they weren't being enforced. So this has the teeth, it has the investment, and it has the province-wide commitment to get this right this September.
Okay. Education Minister Stephen Lecce, such a pleasure. Thanks a lot.